Oh, Charles, the goofballs. Ooh, I forgot our dissolve transition.
How are you?
Charles? I'm well. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to the most silent, noise-free presentation of this particular show that we've had.
Way to go. It's nice to be here with you in the Tomb, which used to formerly known as HQ, now known as the Soundproof Tomb.
So, Charles, Magic Mike has dropped out. What a difference a week makes, huh?
What a difference several hours makes. I mean, literally, he used to be in this picture, but the art department took him out of the picture after he made a complete fool of himself.
Well, luckily we have the goofball in chief always standing by with a stupid look on his face to fill in for whatever loser Democrat has to drop out of the presidential race.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me when you think here that the argument the Democrats are trying to muster against Trump is that Trump has gotten everything wrong, doesn't know what he's doing, that the years where Donald Trump's been in the White House are proof positive that what we really need are career politicians to jump back in and bring the economy and the world back into balance again. And I look at this, and I have no disrespect. I have the utmost reverence for older people, being an older person myself. But I mean, people who I was very fortunate in my life eventually to grow up around people who were way older than I was, and therefore could teach me things that it would have taken me a lot longer to learn had I tried to learn it on my own. And you look at this pack, with the exception of the robotic version of Michelle, who I think is on the shelf waiting to be inserted into the race. Every single person here is over 70 years old, some approaching 80. And the only president in recent memory who hasn't aged remarkably poorly in a short period of time is Trump. I mean, the other ones, if you think about it, if you think about the George W. Bush before and after, I mean, just the presidency ages.
Barack Obama.
Ages a person. And honestly, this is the best they can do, the Democrats. You end up now with creepy, sleepy Joe Biden and Bernie, barely a Democrat, Sanders, as the last people standing, with Elizabeth Warren having successfully tomahawked everybody else. I mean, and meanwhile, you've got the disfigured Hillary Clinton lurking and slithering in the background with her documentary coming out on Friday, taking what remains of the oxygen out of the room.
That's like What Remains of the Day. She could have a movie called What Remains of the Oxygen Left in the Room. People are asking, where's the Wookiee? But it's...
this is Spaceballs, not Star Wars.
Well, but they're saying John Candy is the Wookiee.
Oh, is that right? We should put the Wookiee in there.
But it's Hillary.
Oh, Hillary's the Wookiee. With the cookie.
Yes, exactly.
The Wookiee with a cookie.
And then, of course, Joe looking for his next sniff victim.
Right.
Robot Michelle, still potentially a candidate to be brought in at the last minute on a VP ticket of whoever wants to. They could call this, instead of the 2020 presidential election, they could call it Who Wants to Have a Heart Attack.
That's right, exactly. Exactly. But when I suppose both you and I are making comments about economics and politics on a regular basis now with these shows and other interviews, so we can't be too harsh about pundits. But in the old days, I used to imagine that the political pundits who got up there actually may have known something. And you think back to how earnestly folks were saying that Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee, that he was going to kick Donald Trump's ass, and walk right into the White House. He could do many more push-ups than Trump and all that kind of stuff. And you have whether it's Chris Starwald at Fox or people at MSNBC or CNN, Jake Tapper at CNN and others, they all have been proven conclusively wrong. I mean, it was like remember last week, was it last week the debate before?
It's hard to remember. They're all so forgettable.
Yeah, there was a big debate, I think, and everyone was really wondering about all these different candidates. You had Ernest Alfred E. Newman, boot edge.
Texting people.
Right, randomly, and Amy Klobuchar. You see, I'm built for this. I started my campaign in a snowstorm, and I'm going to end it in a shitstorm. I mean, I'm going to just give up. I mean, all these people, they were huffing and puffing, and they were taking private jets all over the place with entourages and heating and cooling and spending and, bloviating. And then in the blink of an eye, people just said, you know what, forget all that. We'll just make, Sleepy Creepy Joe the front runner. And instantaneously, now he's the presumptive front runner again. I mean,
that's crazy. I mean, it's just, there's been so many indicators, even to the person just sort of casually observing, that the Joe Biden campaign has been on a steady downward trajectory. And it's not like some kind of sports game where suddenly somebody hits a home run and 3 runs come in and you've just changed everything. It's like, what the hell happened that made people want to vote for Joe Biden?
Or perhaps another analogy. I mean, Joe Biden was, Wile E. Coyote underneath the Acme safe, and the Acme safe landed on him, and now suddenly he's going to be president. I mean, that's the way cartoons work. But in real life, this guy, I forget who it was who was running against him or commenting about him. I believe it might have been Cruz, or it was somebody like that, who said that on foreign policy, which was Joe Biden's claim to fame, being such a senior person in the Senate and in the foreign policy establishment, this person went on and said that Joe Biden has been wrong about every single decision he has made on foreign policy, whether minor, major, or indifferent. That guy, right? And here's a guy who in 1988 was running for president and decided not to run. Yeah, because he was a plagiarist. He lifted from, that was in 1998. He decided being a plagiarist disqualified him. But then I suppose the argument is that after 8 years of the Clintons and 4 years of Hillary as Secretary of State, and the fact that everybody in Washington, D.C. and politics seems to lie, it's like, I'm a plagiarist. That uniquely qualifies me to be the candidate in 2020. I've learned how to lie better.
Are you saying, Charles, that Joe Biden, now again becoming the presumptive front runner, doesn't pass the sniff test?
Well, his sniff test.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go into a swimming pool with him, that's for sure.
You could feel the hair on his legs and learn about cockroaches and corn pops.
Yeah. And then, the others, I mean, we sit here and there's much that you can be negative about, I suppose. There's all of your Woody Allen type, you win the lottery and you complain about it. But you look at the biggest economy in the world.
Yeah.
You look at a China that is literally in danger. The Communist Party, I would argue, for the first time in recent history, is in danger, much as the ruling party was in the Soviet Union, of being thrown out of power by an internal uprising, in my view. Mishandling this coronavirus, mishandling the economy, mishandling the trade war, mishandling Hong Kong. And people, just aren't happy in the second biggest, in theory, economy in the world. Europe's falling apart. South America is always falling apart, and I say that as somebody whose grandmother was born in Brazil. So you look around the world, and there are problems every day, but there's a lot going well in the United States of America. And you got this guy, Angry Bernie. I mean, the one thing that maybe Mike got, Kermit the Frog's best friend, got right about Bernie is it's got to be pretty awesome to be here in America and complain about it constantly, end up with 3 homes and living a millionaire lifestyle and private jets when you've never worked an honest day in your life.
I don't know if people knew that Mike Bloomberg was down with Kermit the Frog. That might have helped his campaign more than the gay ice cream.
Except he kind of looks like they're related, Exactly. He's the brother from a different mother.
Well, he's like a child out of wedlock. Oh, wait, you can see the arm up Kermit the Frog's butt in this photograph. That's very rare. You don't normally get to see that. Where's the one up Mike Bloomberg's butt?
Thank you for taking us to that place. But anyway.
Why are my off-color jokes called out and yours are okay?
It's how the meme works.
That's right. So, there's tons going on now, Charles, and there was something else I was going to ask you about. Oh, yeah. So what you're saying about the Communist Party being in danger of being kicked out because of mishandling this coronavirus doesn't make me think less that it's a deliberate biological weapon that somebody put in the bat soup to stir this all up.
Yeah, I think it's more that what the Chinese have been able to sell, I think enabled by so many in academia and mainstream media, is the theory that they have a vision that of management and leadership that's uniquely well suited to the 21st century, and that we Americans aren't smart enough to appreciate this Chinese, wisdom, and that we just better understand that very soon we're going to be lucky to be number two. And all of that is just utter crap. I mean, the Chinese nation is filled with lots of very different people, but the one thing they don't have is a lot of internal institutional knowledge on how to run a business competitively, other than by perhaps cheating. And
maybe they should run for Democratic candidate.
maybe they already are.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not forget that Peter Schweitzer's book, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. Peter Schweitzer's book doesn't simply attack the Bidens for their corruption with Burisma and other family-related stuff, but gets deeply into Chinese-related corruption. And it's been very easy, I think, for multiple actors tied to the communist China to go into the swamp that is Washington, D.C., either via the camp, as Rush likes to say, the campi, the college campuses, or by the media establishment, promise these entities the sun, the moon, and the stars, because everybody in those areas wants into the Chinese market, wants the Chinese students, wants to teach wants the Chinese audience. So it's been very easy for those agents of the communist elite to compromise. I mean, we go back to the Clintons. Everyone's focused on the Clinton Foundation now, and people have forgotten about the degree to which allies of the Communist Chinese Party, going back to when Bill was in Arkansas, sent people out to Arkansas to cultivate people close to the Clintons and the Arkansas elite.
You know what? Saying that Larry Nichols told me about that a long time ago. But he was talking about, I think, a Japanese company that told him. The guy said, "Why? We'll just buy your country. We're buying your politicians."
Well, I wonder if that wasn't the Lippo Group, and
it was,
and that's Indonesian, but linked to the Chinese. But anyway, the investigation into foreign interference in the U.S. political system is not an investigation that should start with regard to 2015. Devin Nunes was on recently saying that Operation Crossfire Hurricane began early in 2015. That may be true, but this project that foreign governments have had to meddle in the largest economy in the world's elections is a project that goes way back, and it's a project that we should have expected, in that we're not blameless. I mean, American politicians and interests have been meddling in elections around the world since America was created. I mean, that's kind of what we do. Whether we should do it is another question, but that's what we have done in the past. So back then, for a second, on the front runners, you got Bite Me, and you got Bernie. And I kind of enjoy Bernie. I think he's got a speech coach, and I don't know if he's left-hander.
What makes you say that?
Well, he uses the same mannerisms, and he loves talking with these type of microphones, which I hate because it's distracting to have. And he will talk, and he'll do like this with the hand. And then they'll say, number one, duh, duh, duh. And everything is, of course, the establishment is upset with me because I'm going to tax them. And it's just, and you listen to it for a while, and it's amazing. It's like, he's the Pied Piper of the people who are living in their parents' sub-basements. I mean, he's another one of these guys who is going to give you lots of free stuff. Nothing's ever going to cost anything. Everybody else has made a mistake. He's never made any mistakes. He doesn't understand why people are upset with Cuba, because he's never. He went down to Cuba supposedly.
Cuba. I thought you meant John Cuba.
No,
I meant John
F. Kennedy Cuba.
Yeah.
And he went down to Cuba and with some other senators, and they met with prisoners. And the prisoners come forward, who's ultimately been released, saying Bernie just didn't understand why the prisoners were upset being in prison in Cuba.
What?
I mean, well, he moved from New York City. He could go anywhere. I like rural areas, but the number of people who went from Brooklyn or Queens or wherever he's from and resettled to Burlington, Vermont,
low.
Is probably pretty low as a guess. I mean, there are not that many people in Vermont to begin with.
He is 1,000. I don't know if people from outside of New York realize the incredible concentration of Brooklynism that exists in Bernie Sanders.
Right. I mean, maybe he should come back after he loses, after he gets stuffed again. Maybe he should take Jerry Nadler's seat.
Well, he's very reminiscent of Howard Stern's imitation of his own father.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I actually think it would be better. And I think what should have happened, what Democrats should have done, is they should have told Bernie Sanders to just go from each, spend a third of each year in his three homes, one third in each of the homes. Then they should have recruited Larry David to pretend that he was Bernie
Right.
Sanders. And he
Stand
would have
in.
won. If you could have let Larry David run, he would have won. He would have easily beaten Joe Biden, and he probably would beat Donald Trump.
So Rod H is telling us that there was some additional threat from Chuck Schumer. Did you hear anything about
Yeah,
that?
that Chuck Schumer threatened the two Supreme Court justices, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, apparently over, I forget, it was over abortion or something. But
What did he say?
it's on Rantingly, the story, if you want to try to find it quickly. It's on the upper left side of Rantingly. But I was preparing for the show, so I didn't read it carefully. I didn't feel it was overly germane, and I don't necessarily want to give Chuck Schumer any more. It's down here, I think. Yeah, here he goes.
What's with the training? Like, that's interesting.
Here you go, right here.
Mini Mike. Okay, this one?
Yeah. At a pro-abortion rally.
Huh. Chuck Schumer just threatened Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch. Well, Schumer likes to do that sort of thing, like when he told Trump that you have to do what the intelligence agencies say. I mean, whether you like or dislike Trump, what Chuck Schumer was saying was absolutely idiotic. The president needs to defer to the intelligence agencies. I think we want a president who has the ability to analyze what he's being told and make a decision about it rather than just doing what he's told.
Right, and this guy, Schumer is an old-fashioned bully. He's acquired a lot of power as a senior senator from representing New York State in theory. And on the one hand, when Donald Trump makes negative comments about a Supreme Court justice, that's the end of the world. But Schumer can get up there as he's not even the leader of the Senate, right? I mean, he's in the minority in the Senate, and he has the nerve to threaten two Supreme Court justices out of 9. Who the hell does he think he is?
Why is he not the Speaker of the House?
Because he's a senator.
Oh, right. That's
Among
a
other
stupid
reasons.
question. Right. So, but was he ever the Speaker of the House?
No, he was in the House. He was certainly never the Speaker.
Right.
But he did get a 1600 on his SATs, according to his
I don't believe
Wikipedia,
that.
and occasionally he stays in a Quality Inn.
I'll tell you, he's riding Amtrak in the first class cabin, and at least he's smart enough to not argue about the cheeseburgers.
Is he the one who had a hot dog at Amtrak, or was that somebody else?
Well, I didn't observe him having a hot dog. He was sitting there in first class on Amtrak, and I went and spoke to him, and he was a jerk.
Oh yeah, well he's a nonstop jerk. Actually, before we get into this, I just want to reveal one thing. There was only one choice for dinner last night, and it was a clear and present opportunity, and that was when Hillary was quoted, I guess, in some interview or another, saying that she, in this Hulu documentary that's coming out on Friday, she refers to Sanders' program as a bunch of baloney.
Yeah.
So I had to stop at Christini's and get some
some
bologna.
bologna.
So
Oh,
of course I
Charles.
had a bologna sandwich last night.
Oh my God.
Because I like bologna.
It's so bad for you. Though.
It's really good, actually. When you use that fake American cheese with it, it's
Oh,
great. And
Charles.
iceberg lettuce.
Oh my God.
It's good. On rye bread.
Now, we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so I think we've got a lot to get to today, Charles. I do like to remind people that if they're watching Sunday with Charles and they're watching Charles Ortel is Closing In and the Bishop Gators show and all these free shows on YouTube, they can't be here on YouTube free of charge to viewers without the support of the viewers themselves. So I really hope that people will go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors of the show. Lee Stranahan is out of the hospital and will be back with us tonight on High Dive. So people can join us for that at 8 p.m. And that's going to be a sponsor exclusive show on Patreon and Subscribestar.
Very good. Well, so this very quick reset from an actual campaign to adoration of the maggots instead of adoration of the magi.
That would be a great one too.
If I were sitting there as Bernie Sanders at his age, I guess he's 78 now, I think, and seeing
78?
how I think he is 78. I think he'll be 79 in the fall if he makes it.
Can we just make an objective evaluation for a second? There's no cardiologist on the planet who would say, yeah, that stent's fine, go run for president.
That's right, except his.
Definitely didn't say that.
Yeah.
He's like, you shouldn't do it, but...
Yeah. Anyway, but he's sitting there, and forget the heart attack issue for a second. If you've got really at least maybe just one more run to do this, why wouldn't you try it as an independent? You know it failed as a Democrat. You know what they can do. You saw what they could do. You've got your 3 houses. Do you want a house in Florida out of it? The 4th house. Or do you just want to try this as an independent? And I think part of Trump's charm in the 2015-16 time period is he just dissed Jeb Bush and the establishment Republicans, and people like me loved that.
Yeah.
I was sick and tired of taking advice from, oh yeah, Bob Dole's our man in '96, and and oh yeah, George W. Bush is actually really smart. He just doesn't know how to show it. And to see Trump come along and say, listen, I'll run as a Republican, but I don't need to. And I'm going to shake things up. And everyone was saying, oh, the Republican Party is so entrenched, they're going to make mincemeat out of him. He's got the Republicans, and of all people, evangelicals, eating out of his hand, which is a masterful thing. Whereas, in contrast, Mike Bloomberg did that video in the last 24 hours where he was eating pizza sloppily.
Oh.
You saw that?
No, I didn't see
try to
that.
illustrate how coronavirus might get spread. And Trump called him out on that. That's disgusting, Mike. And he's right.
Wow. So he goes from eating gay ice cream to eating sloppy pizza.
Yeah.
What is Mike Bloomberg doing? He's just so far off the mark.
That's right. He obviously listens to nobody.
Right.
So there is, I think, if you're sitting there trying to handicap the future, there's a probability, it's certainly more than 25%, that Bernie's people, and Bernie has been rather silent since last night, they may go back into their corner and say, you know what, F these Democrats. We're going to run as independents. And because when you go through the math, I was struck state by state, and to the extent I listened to this garbage on mainstream television, I would listen to the estimates of the percentage of the likely voters who are independent, Democrat, and Republican. And many of the states, the independent percentage is the highest. And the trend is towards people leaving the established parties going to independent. So if you're Bernie Sanders, you're your prototypical independent. I mean, he still is not officially a Democrat. I'd bolt. And then you can control your future. You don't have to worry about the rules. You may or may not elect to debate. In the debate. I mean, why debate Joe Biden? He could debate himself. He won't remember what he said 30 seconds ago.
He'd challenge himself to a fight.
Yeah, listen, fat. I'm not fat. Who said I was fat? You did. I did.
Somebody talking.
I mean, it's just, and Bernie could just take his campaign to the key states, spend time in California, spend time in New York, spend time in the key electoral college states, F the debates, F the talk shows. And he'll have all these people swarming and getting ready to canvass and intimidate people into voting. And he'll have some fun. But, what's he going to do? Coordinate his schedule with Joe Corruption Biden? I mean, I don't know how much you've gotten into Peter Schweitzer's excellent latest book, but I mean, the chapters...
I think you do know. I haven't read it. I like Peter Schweitzer, I just haven't had a chance to read it.
Well, I mean, the chapter on Biden, we Bidens, I mean, their sport is everybody in the family is corrupt. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm in on this. Joe could do this. I'll do that. His brother, his other brother, his kids, his in-laws, everyone's in it. And you don't think that's going to come out? You don't think that Trump's team doesn't have a gigantic war room ready to drop this mud?
I mean, isn't it already out? It's
No,
just
not
being
to the extent
totally denied by...
you know how when Donald Trump decides to make an issue of something, how he does it. I mean, he called many out on this whole campaign and rigging the election adroitly in the last week. right? I mean, he took Minnie like one of those little cartoons of bugs, and he just went, and sent him to American Samoa, where evidently he did very well in American Samoa.
That's amazing that people are even voting in American Samoa. And how do they know? I mean, how is Mike Bloomberg at all recognized in American Samoa?
I don't know. I just don't know.
He looks pretty, I don't know. This is interesting to see the color contrast of Donald Trump from, the makeup thing has got to go.
The orange look?
It's just, I can't imagine that it looks like that, to your eye. It's got to be something with the way color cameras pick that up, but I don't understand how someone hasn't told him to stop doing that.
I don't know. Again, I don't know that Donald Trump listens to many people. So.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think we've seen a dizzying set of changes in really 24 to 48 hours in the prospects for the Democrats. And one of the things that people were saying about the 2016 cycle was that the extended period during which Donald Trump had to fight for the nomination actually helped him campaign in the general, because he was sparring longer, he was dealing with combat longer. Letting Joe off the hook, letting him get back and push his walker around and pretend that he's a viable candidate in early March 4th. I mean, this is a long, long time before Donald Trump won. It's a long, Hillary Clinton didn't give up effectively give up on Barack Obama until June 5th. And I think in the case of Trump, it was mid to late May 2016. So now you've got Joe Biden. Think how many things he can screw up between now and Memorial Day, let alone...
I was thinking between now and dinner.
Exactly. And his game is not that strong to begin with in 2020, Joe Biden.
Never was.
So another thing to mention here is that while Joe Biden, I have not combed through the Biden Foundation filings. There are some, and Joe did announce that he would give up on his foundation. People have been sending me emails saying you really ought to look at it, because apparently there are very high expenses and very low grants, and it could be another way in which he feathered his nest after 16 when he left the vice presidential mansion. But Americans, and we're seeing more and more announcements by the Justice Department of disciplinary actions and lawsuits and jail sentences against...
He's evaluating the sexual orientation of this ice cream.
More and more fake charities and corrupt schemes are being exposed by the Justice Department under Trump and Barr. All that being said, we need to see some real actions finally against these Clinton charities. We need to see the Obama Foundation disciplined. What the hell is going on with building this replica of Easter Island up there in Chicago in a national park? And Trump has, at this point, I think, no reason to fear retribution from the race baiters who would try to whip blacks into a frenzy against him, because he actually has delivered, not simply for blacks, but for people who are economically disadvantaged across America. Trump's policies are working very well. Witness the low unemployment rate, witness the job creation, witness the faster than average increase in incomes for the lower educated cohort of the employment force, which is really something to marvel at, and witness the number of new businesses created that are owned by economically disadvantaged people.
Well, in the context of what you're saying, Charles, I think it's worth reminding people of that time, maybe about a year ago, that I actually went to the park where the Easter Island head is being constructed.
Right.
And a black gentleman told me he was very disappointed in Barack Obama that he was not being hired to work on the construction of this. So interesting to see that members of the black community are disappointed with Barack Obama and perhaps pleasantly surprised by the performance of Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, you're seeing it. You're seeing people. I'm very cynical about this Afghanistan peace deal, but I understand.
Well, they just said there was another airstrike this morning. What kind of peace deal is that?
It's a peace deal where the former president gets a Nobel Prize for his great work during 2 weeks in 2009.
Yeah. I also would like to thank Patricia Stone for using super stickers, Charles. People can enjoy a pear character blowing hearts into the air.
Oh, well, that's nice. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. So the Trump administration has a lot of accomplishments to point to. Draining the swamp is not yet on that list, and maybe he will do more and more of that through the course of the summer and through the election period. But we really need to hope that the president and his team get serious about doing obvious things, which we're going to talk about some of them today.
Yes.
So with that, for the new viewers, and I guess you're constantly getting new viewers and new Twitter followers and new subscribers, this project is an experiment that, thank you, Jason, for letting us do. This is, I guess, our 214th one of these. This will be 90 minutes as opposed to the standard 2 hours. But the approach we take here is to try to do what, to marry up some of Jason's skills coming out of Hollywood and media with some of my skills coming out of advising boards and wealthy investors in complex transactions. We're trying to use this podcast, this multimedia podcast approach, in combination with pull-down slides that, if you do so electronically, have links where you can get access to literally millions of pages of evidence to help you understand what we're talking about here. We're trying to do this in a different fashion, one that is not allowed on mainstream media or even on cable TV, just because those are typically ad-sponsored approaches, and they're formulaic, and their formula is to have segments of maybe 6 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. At their longest, maybe you have a 40-minute special, but it doesn't allow you to develop this line of incisive inquiry into a fraud that, at this standing, seems to be the largest set of unprosecuted frauds ever attempted in history, and it stretches around the world. So it doesn't limit itself to just being something of interest in Canada or the United States or the UK. It's of interest to donor countries, or it should be. It's of interest to recipient countries and people around the world, whatever their nationality. So we realized, Jason and I, when we began on this, that it would require a lot of work. Don't think we suspected we'd be doing 214 podcasts and still counting, but it's been a pleasure to do it, and thank you for doing all the heavy lifting. And
hardly.
And the approach that we take is to lay things out that are based on publicly available evidence, guide you towards the evidence. If you like what we're doing, and I am now regularly getting, and thank you for doing so, emails and messages from supporters around the world who say that not only do they enjoy a given show, but typically what they decide to do after they see one show is to say, well, let me see another. And so many people
binge watching
say that they've seen all 200 plus.
Wow.
And some actually say that they do it more than once.
Yeah.
I think it could be that the approach we're taking is helpful to people who are trying to learn English. It's helpful to people who are trying to learn about complex frauds.
Swear words,
that's the swear word department. The getting in trouble department. The saintly department. No. but anyway, so this is a different approach, and what we're trying to do here is lay down markers so that when the prosecutions do start, and they are, I believe, starting, people will be able to go back, all the know-it-alls, and say, oh, this is never going to happen. We'll be able to go into a room with Smarty Pants Michael Bloomberg, and we should force Mike to watch all of these podcasts, and he can admit that he was wrong with green regs and scam. He can admit that he's so smart that the Clintons and Ira Magazine have pulled his pants down on the Clinton Climate Initiative and C40 large cities. Got him when he was a mayor with national aspirations. Back in 2010, they got him to get very much more associated and agree to serve as chair of C40 large cities. And to be fair to Mike, he has given a lot of money away anonymously and very, very professionally and selflessly. But he slipped up with C40 because C40 is a monumental ongoing scam. It should never be operated as a charity. Boris Johnson should be ashamed of himself because he was involved. Ken Livingstone, the mayor of London, and many other mayors around the world have been flying around to fancy conferences, allowing the likes of companies like GE and Siemens and others to go to these fancy conferences, these catered meals, and talk high-sounding smack to one another as they put together crooked deals and kickbacks and stuff, re-equipping cities with equipment they'd sell them anyway. This is a business development exercise for big cities. It is not anything to do with charity. It should never have been approved as a charity. All the paperwork is effed up, and Bloomberg missed it.
You know, there's a couple things I want to tell you, Charles. First of all, I wanted to thank, again, Michael Smith, because last week's show with his segment, for whatever reason, his information is always great, but it just had a real flow to it that was really a strong show, I felt. And seeing Thailand and all that, it had a number of elements that were, I think, really good. So people who haven't seen that can go back and check it out. Got to thank John Doe for utilizing Super Chat. The Magic 8 Ball says, great work, Charles. I like those Magic 8 Balls. I don't know if you can get them anymore. But, you know, we did a show last night with Michael Moore, and we were talking about the CDC.
The fat one or the smart one?
No, the smart one, the regular Michael Moore from True Pundit. I don't talk to that. Actually, I did one time talk to that other Michael Moore. But
it's keep your eyes off my dinner.
No. But the thing is, the CDC, I mean, again, like the Fed, and I think many people presume that the CDC was some government thing that's there to control diseases, but it's not. It's a private thing that's funded by a foundation. It itself is donating money to the Clinton Foundation. So, like, what kind of foundation is donating to a foundation? Like, if you're a charity trying to get money, why are you giving out money?
Well, those are called grant-making foundations, and they... people do that. It's if you've got a lot of money to give away, and you have a long-standing mission wherein you're trying to instigate action beyond just what your narrow organization can do, you may very well decide that you want to give money to actual charities. Now, it's useful when you do that to do your due diligence and make sure that the charity is not a fraud and a slush fund designed to give the Clintons and their allies cushy lifestyles and fund their political campaigns. But they're allowed to do it, and indeed you make a great point. The CDC has given money to this Clinton Foundation unlawfully.
Well, and not only that, it seems, you know, if people go and watch Del Bigtree's movie Vaxxed, it talks all about, you know, not Jenny McCarthy and people who are non-scientists, not to disparage them, but it talks about a scientist at the CDC who was involved in the study in this particular Merck DPT vaccine, provided Del Bigtree with scientific evidence that the vaccine was causing injuries, and the CDC actively worked to cover it up. And the woman who was the director of the CDC then went on to work for Merck for a $5 million job. So that seems like some sort of fraud.
Well, yeah, this is for another topic maybe,
Yes.
but the whole area of you know, why is it that in the United States we spend so much money on medicine and healthcare and don't, for the quantum increase that we spend on all that, we don't have a quantum increase in life expectancy or, you know, other metrics that might argue that our people are better, are healthier than other countries around the world. So there's the whole area of medicine is one that is not regulated properly. And why are all these Ivy League institutions, why do they all have gigantic hospitals? Why do they have, I checked it recently, why does Harvard Medical School, which Harvard used to be a great place, why is it that with all their tens of billions of dollars in the university and endowment, they still are only minting roughly 250 new doctors per year? Why is it?
I don't know, but I do want to thank 4K CD for utilizing Super Chat. Very generous Super Chat users today, Charles. 4K CD says she still doesn't think these traitors will face justice, but she likes you all the same.
All right,
or I don't know why I think 4K CD is a woman. I think we might have communicated in the past. If 4K CD is a man, I apologize. And then also Oppenheimer, with a very generous Australian contribution here on Super Chat, is saying that the show is an inspiration to young girls, Charles, because they too can grow up to be mass murderers and billionaire fraudsters like Hillary.
Very well done. That's
Well
good.
said.
Good. So if folks want to reach out to Jason or to me, you can get us on Twitter. You can get me on my website. I think you've shown people the playlist before.
Yes. Well, the playlist, of course, is a good resource for people, Charles. And if they want to follow you on Twitter, Charles Ortel, they can do that, or me at CS The Truth. That playlist is easy for people to access on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. That's the primary home of Crowdsource The Truth, which is just days away from the live streaming ban being lifted. I just haven't gotten around to contesting that fraudulent ban, but it's going to expire pretty soon. So people can watch the live streams on Crowdsource The Truth too, and it's a useful thing to subscribe to so that if these sort of social engineering attacks in the future take out the live streaming, you can always catch the live streams on the backup channel. And this playlist is still accessible even when live streaming is not. You can click on any one of these. Actually, I think this one might not have a presentation with it because this is when we were in Norway, but the overwhelming majority of them do have slide presentations that accompany them, the PDF documents that we scroll through for the majority of the show. They're always linked here in the description box, which is right below the video. Usually requires you to click Show More, and that's going to reveal all the sponsorship links for Subscribestar and Patreon, as well as the link that always says download Charles's presentation. We have Fabien Chalandon's supplement on this one, but you just click on the link and it's going to take you right to the PDF where you can download it to your own computer, to print it out, to follow along as the show goes. Do whatever you want.
It's a lot of paper, Jason.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Good.
That's why we provide it electronically, Charles, to save the trees.
Exactly. So why don't we fly through the next page, if we can.
Yeah, something has happened here that's...
We've lost control of the con.
No, we've got it. There we go.
Okay. So I don't say this lightly, and I won't say who it is, but I'm aware of somebody who had to deal with a parent dying ultimately in part of Alzheimer's and mental and dementia. But I saw a post. I like Free Republic. For those of you who are not using Free Republic, I heartily recommend it, www.freerepublic.com. I saw a post where a doctor or somebody claiming to understand signs of dementia basically ticked them off and said, that's Joe Biden. I mean, it's not merely that he's forgetful.
Sniffing little girls? That's
well,
Biden.
but and here's another one. I don't know who Bob Lonsberry is, but this column is worth reading. And he goes through a number of signs of dementia. One is, of course, I can imagine that if you had dementia, as your mind was going, you'd probably be getting madder and madder, and frustrated, and you take that out. So you get, irascible. You get angry. You threaten to challenge people to push-up matches, and, beat them up, and this and that, and then you also just try to gut your way through it, which I think is a technique. I remember I knew this one actress who explained that when you screw up on a Broadway play in which she had been a star many times, you don't correct yourself. You just power right through it.
Yeah.
Right, and that's so. Biden has been on stage for quite a long time. Unfortunately, most of the time on his face, but. And here's this I think one would have to take seriously. I mean, there was a lot of chatter. I remember my acquaintances who are anti-Trump Democrats. I went to a lunch, which was really fun to go to after he won, where they were just accusing him of being a Nazi, and they're making up all these rumors about how his kids knew he had dementia, and there was this problem and that problem. He'd never make it. He wasn't going to be inaugurated. This was in late November 2016. I'm not, of course, trying to practice medicine. I'm very squeamish. But when I read these articles about what are the signs of dementia, what are the signs of Alzheimer's, and you just look at this bonehead, and it's clear there is no back room in the Democratic Party where people are saying, all right, listen, what we're going to do, listen, Fat, what we're going to do is we're going to really come up with a barn-burning, we're going to get the best team. Remember when Obama said that stuff about ISIS? They're just a JV.
The junior varsity, right?
We're going to put like the third grade team together.
Right.
We're going to go like to some sanitarium, and we're going to get 5 or 6 people and say, hey, you guys could be the ladies, you could be the front runners, and the lady will say, well, don't you understand? I'm actually Napoleon Bonaparte's wife. Well, don't say that on the campaign trail. We're going to let you run for president. But I mean, it's really, I mean, such a weak candidate. And so far, the interactions, slight that there have been between Trump and Biden, it's like, I remember when thinking about doing certain things and then deciding I wouldn't even try to compete on a certain level, let's say in tennis against a real pro, and then you go and watch these pros. It's not going to be pretty, Biden versus Trump in a debate, if there is a debate. Now, then you have the question, of course, of, I don't know if you saw that at some event last night, angry vegans tried to storm.
I did see that.
And if we go back to the slide,
A few things scarier than angry vegans.
I know,
Charles.
I know. You can't say, all right, you can have a steak. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that.
What is Jill Biden a doctor of?
Well, that's the next point. So apparently this has become lunging vegans. Or after, here's Biden looking at him. He's like, why am I here? I'll let my wife take care. I'm not gonna hide behind my wife's skirt. Oh yeah, I am. I guess I will do that. Right. So there's the future president of the United States, defended by his wife.
Well, she should have broke out the shotgun. Didn't he tell her to buy a shotgun at some point?
Well, remember as well. I mean, this is Biden's wife was the one who defended him when he was accused of being too handsy.
Right.
Right. So now look, who's the handsy one?
Yeah.
This was beating the crap out of the vegans. Right? It's like a roller derby.
Vegan beatdown. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but that prompted a distinguished observer of all things that are important in life, Whoopi Goldberg, to suggest that watching Dr. Biden in action here makes her a perfect candidate to be Surgeon General.
Oh my God.
Until somebody said, well, actually, she's not a doctor.
Oh boy. Why did we think she was a doctor?
Because it said Dr. Jill Biden. You'd say, well, okay, he's a doctor.
What is this?
She's, I think, a psychiatrist, or she's a doctor of education. So Bill Cosby was a doctor of education. I mean,
make him the Surgeon General from prison. Wouldn't that be funny if all the press conferences took place in D Block?
That's right. Yeah, is our Surgeon General still alive? Yes.
Who is the Surgeon General now?
I don't know.
The last Surgeon General I remember is that guy Edward Koop, because he looked ridiculous.
Yeah, the uniform. Where did those uniforms go? But so then this transition for Mr. Bloomberg. Now, I have noticed. I like Brett Baier, and he has this smile, this way of smiling and asking a really tough question. So when he asks a question, which he did it to Klobuchar, he did it to I forget who. What's your pathway to the presidency? He did that to Mayor Mike on Monday. It's like, my pathway to the presidency is ancient history. There is no, it's not going to happen, right?
Right.
And I could tell actually in the town hall. I watched some of it on, I think it was Monday, that Bloomberg was not doing well in the town hall. You know how somebody. You run across somebody who's a perpetual complainer about everything.
Was that a debate? I don't know if I saw that.
It was a Fox. You probably didn't. It's a Fox because they're not allowed to do any of the debates.
Oh no, I saw the CBS one where they were all yelling at each other.
No, this was hilarious. This was Mayor Mike down in Virginia the day before the Virginia primaries, and Martha McCallum and Brett Baier asking questions, interacting, and audience interacting with Bloomberg. And Bloomberg was basically trying to argue that Donald Trump was all screwed up and that he knew how to do everything better and he'd get everything right. And then when pressed, it was more or less, well, I don't like what he's doing. I just do what he's doing better.
Wait a minute.
Okay, Mike. Yeah. And there was nothing there. I mean, the thing about Trump, like him or hate him, the thing about Trump is he always makes an impression. He's not like sitting there saying, I wonder what Donald Trump thinks. I mean, you know what he thinks. And he's the guy who has had enough. He's Jackie Gleason, a serious Jackie Gleason, has had enough of all the pencil neck, pointy heads telling you, the Grubers telling you that this is the right way to do it and it doesn't work, and just ignore the fact that it doesn't work and I'm burning your money. He's the kind of guy who says, no, I'm not going to ignore that fact. You're a weasel. Get out of here. This is what we're going to do. On the other hand, with Bloomberg, it's, you may not like my ideas, but I'm much richer than you are, and I'm going to spend a lot of money. That's my pathway.
And I'm going to lick my fingers and touch every donut.
Right, exactly. Because it's my house.
Right.
It's my fucking house.
Yeah. It's like you get coronavirus, too bad.
Yeah. And then we have, this was pretty funny. When I first saw this story in this picture, I didn't realize it was Valerie Jarrett, but this is right up your alley.
Oh my God.
This is right up your alley.
That's hilarious.
Did you see this?
I did not until now.
I didn't realize, at first I didn't even recognize her, and then somebody, this is a funny way.
I can't believe, it's like Halloween. What is she doing?
Well, she got up on a real show, and she said, it's incumbent on the Democratic nominee to select a woman to be, a person of color, to be the vice presidential candidate. But dressed like this? I mean, in her purple resistance version of Austin Powers?
It's ridiculous.
Again, this is, I live alone, but so I can imagine that, maybe I walk out the front door and I should have had somebody tell me, don't wear the same freaking jacket every day or something. But I'm not running for president, right?
Well, knowing is half the battle, Charles.
Right, but I'm not running for president. You don't walk out dressed like Gumby.
I mean, that is just such a ridiculous look.
Right.
I love it that they did this, juxtaposed it with, that's a man, baby. Well, okay, I'm just, that's hard to get over, but very interesting.
We try to give our guests visual education. So this is, I put this up here for a few reasons. One is this is John Solomon's new site, Just the News.
Right.
And two is to draw attention to the fact, this and the story below are stories about this Pfizer renewal. It's got to be renewed by March 15th. The Senate goes out on March 13th for another holiday.
What?
Yeah, well, it's springtime. It's getting
I haven't
close.
had a vacation in like 14 years.
You should run for the Senate.
Yeah, exactly.
Run for president as a Democrat. There may be an opening.
I don't know if that would work.
You never know. Bloomberg did it.
This seems pretty significant, Charles. I mean, we've heard Rand Paul say that FISA doesn't need to be reformed; it needs to be thrown away because it's unconstitutional and problematic.
Right.
What do you think of this?
I just don't know. I mean, this is good if it's true that Trump is standing firm and saying, well, no, we're not going to do business as usual. But on the other hand, the swamp is pretty swampy, and there's not much time. We're on March 4th today. There's 11 days left, or 9 to 11 days, depending on how you look at it. And I'm certainly not satisfied with the approach of Lindsey Graham, who supposedly was going to have all kinds of hearings about what happened. We've seen nothing in public.
But instead, he's chosen to just do nothing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. To congratulate Joe Biden on his great victory in South Carolina. I mean, it's just
Well, his schedule is just, packed with
appearances. Yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. Nothing burgers.
Sitting around, ordering cocktails, going to restaurants.
Lecturing us on how great American foreign policy has been.
Very busy day.
Right. So then, this is an interesting thing. The next one down. Our great friend, whose name is here, Robert Bishop, this was his first offering in the American Thinker, and it's a very well-considered piece. And Bob had noticed that MSNBC, which I don't think he watches terribly much of, for good reason, that the president of MSNBC was on the board of a charity, in quotes, called Operation Hope. And MSNBC and CNBC, which are in the same extended loony family, have given this Operation Hope, John Hope Bryant, a lot of airtime over the course of a long time. Yet its paperwork is just, it's not as bad as the Clinton Foundation because it's much smaller, but it's school of Clinton Foundation. Nothing is correct, no filings are correct, no audits make any sense, no tax filings are done properly, none of the potentially illegal benefits that John Hope Bryant has derived personally through, and by that I mean advantages, edges, not merely money. You're not supposed to operate, this is a public charity Operation Hope. It's not supposed to be controlled by its creator or its family or its wife, or anyone connected to John Hope Bryant. It's supposed to have a truly independent board. and it's supposed to stick to its authorized purposes. Of course, it has done nothing like that. And Bob is a very swift writer and analyzer, an experienced businessman, a retired CPA. He has been, he contributed to this thing. He was horrified by what he saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so we're seeing in this first foray, I think we may see some more articles out of our good friend Bob, who's really a fantastic human being. But I had mentioned to him that I thought that there might be a connection between Chris Matthews' sudden resignation and Bob's piece. And if you go back into the slide, you will see that indeed this article here in the Daily Mail alleges that Phil Griffin had to fly down to deal with Matthews. And of course, he is this longtime CEO. He's a hard left guy. I think Phil Griffin needs to be retired. His jersey needs to be retired. And I actually have no problem at all with a network being super hard left and super hard right, because you can switch the channel.
But how does this tie to Bob Bishop?
Because Bob called out Phil Griffin, longtime service on the board of a charity that has gone rogue and broken the law, just at the same time as people were calling out Matthews for his failure to comport himself as a journalist and perhaps his Me Too problems. And it must have been an uncomfortable set of discussions for Phil Griffin, because he's not exactly an angel here. I mean, you can't walk in and say, well, look, Chris, you're breaking all these laws over here, maybe by being too handsy with journalists and employees or whatever, but I only break charity laws.
Right.
So you can't give me a hard time for that. I'm not going to give you a hard time for breaking some of your laws. You just give me immunity. And I think, I got to believe Phil Griffin's on shaky ground. There's no question that MSNBC is a joke.
Right.
And even to a certain extent, CNBC, for another time, we can talk about the fact that it used to be that you would watch a CNBC to get stock tips and bond tips and ideas to how to invest. But nowadays, very few individual investors are beating the market. So large, even sophisticated people are saying, I'm not going to listen to that crap anymore. I'm just going to buy an instrument that will replicate the performance of the market. And so I don't care about beating the market. I just want to keep up with the market. As you move to this, away from this idea of coming up with ideas to merely following indices, God, it's amazing how he does Family Guy.
Well, I was going to say, will NBC replace Phil Griffin with Peter Griffin? Might be a good choice.
That show, I got to say, I'm way past the age of wanting to watch cartoons, but when I end up,
it's so funny.
It is so funny. The humor is so quick on that. And it's so far out there.
Yeah, it's edgy.
Yeah. So now this is another one. The New York Times, it really used to be something that I cared about, and I'm sure there are excellent writers at the New York Times, but the management is screwed.
Yeah.
And now the New York Times is urging YouTube to clamp down on supposed conspiracies, like trying to maybe pack the 2020 presidential election and blame it on the Russians, that kind of thing. Oh no, they're not going to clamp down on that because that's what they want to do, right? And this approach is stupid on so many levels. Yeah. Beyond which I love. Just for comedic relief, watching Ancient Aliens, which has new episodes now. It's hilarious watching that kind of stuff. Why would you want to clamp down on that?
Well, but I got a question for you, Charles. This guy, Alexander Hall, speaking of stupid, aliens are a conspiracy. Aliens are a sort of biological concept of life on another planet. A conspiracy is two people working together to do some sort of a crime.
I think what he probably means here is the notion that aliens have already landed.
But what he's doing is conflating the word conspiracy, which is an actual crime, with a false meaning of it being something fictitious that basically was heavily concentrated on by the CIA after the JFK assassination, when people like Mark Lane started making movies. Obviously, if YouTube existed in 1963, Mark Lane is doing, or was doing, essentially what Rudy Giuliani is doing right now, taking the media into his own hands. Yeah. So they dubbed him a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. But this is just, I mean, more proof positive that, yeah, again, given a choice between reading the New York Times and the bad Korean English version of the manual explaining that latest TV that you bought, I'd be all in on the manual.
There's a Korean manual for that?
I'm just, there probably is. So then this is on for more comedic relief. I don't know if you saw this one, Jason, that in Vietnam, evidently the Vietnamese have a sense of humor, and there's a safety dance that somebody came up with for the coronavirus, and it's gone viral. So
What do you
people
mean?
can watch this. So if you don't have to do it now, but there's
Is this it?
I guess.
Safety dance? Oh, it's a cartoon.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, people can check that out.
Yeah.
Gienko.
But it has a lot of views, apparently.
Well, that's because it doesn't have Hillary Clinton or Mrs. Bill.
That's right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. And so now this final point we're going to take up on the next slide as well, but I would not be so quick to conclude that the last 24 hours have been great for Democrats. Indeed, I see signs that we're going to go into that this is a monumental reversal on many, many levels for down-ticket Democrats. You are seeing signs that California, which was trending in House seats, was going to stay blue, and as to say Democrat, and Republicans were going to get smoked. I think you're going to see that the movement to try to defend Joe Biden, when people really start thinking about it, and articles are written by disgruntled Bernie bros and others who look at the corruption in the Biden family, and then you're going to have to have the Department of Making Biden look good is going to have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and find a way to time phone hack back and forth, because you're not. It's just a full-time job to turn that guy's record into something that is something you might vote for.
I think they need 2 people just to keep his teeth in his mouth.
Exactly. Listen, fat. So this is a quick job where I went into Google, and these are all temporary results. So some of them are not quite, they're in the 90% of all votes had been counted at the time this morning that I did this work. And I just took a number of the states where there had been both a Democrat primary and a Republican primary. In some of the states there were no Republican primary, but there was a Democrat. And all I was interested in here, there are other candidates who got a lot of votes in the Democratic contest, Bloomberg, Warren, people like that. But at this stage, we're really down to Biden, Sanders, or as the English say, Saunders, and Trump. And I was just interested to see state by state. Now remember the important difference between the Democrat contests and the Republican contest. The Republican contest is a formality. Donald Trump.
Because he's the nominee.
I mean, there's no serious person running against Donald Trump, and nobody's going to dislodge him in the primary. So there's actually no real reason to go to the polls, particularly if you have to drive anywhere or step around shit in Los Angeles and San Francisco or whatever to get to your polling place.
Wade through it.
Right. So you look at this and you say, in the case of Biden and Sanders, take California as an example, less than 1 million people voted for Biden at the time that I was looking at this, and 700,000, more than 700,000 for Sanders. But look how many people in California, of all places, went out for a formality to vote for Trump, 1.4 million. Now, let's think about that for a second. Is it going to be possible, if Biden is the nominee, to placate Bernie bros again, who had Hillary steal the nomination, I would argue, in 2015-16 from them? Now Biden's doing it again. Are these people really going to show up in California and actually vote? And I don't think many of them are going to vote. It's going to be very tough to convert the Sanders voters to support Biden. On the other hand, and Trump has said this, and smart people, I believe, are smart in the political sense, have said, there are Sanders supporters, people, frankly, you were a Sanders supporter, I think, back in 15 and 16, who were dissatisfied with the establishment and drawn to Sanders. And then you thought about it and you said, eh.
So they kicked him out and got in Hillary, and then I learned about what he actually did and didn't like him anymore.
Right, but it's people who thirst for the kind of revolutionary change that Sanders is promising are people who, if they think about it, might actually like some elements of what Trump is doing. You're never going to convert the people who think that Nicaragua and Cuba and communist China, were the Pol Pot death camps were great. But the people who don't like a national security state run amok and are not particularly upset with the idea that they might make more money and keep more of it under a Trump plan, some of those Sanders people who voted yesterday in Super Tuesday may end up voting for Trump. But a lot more people than voted for Trump are going to come out. Republicans and conservatives and independents are going to come out in the general. I'm somebody who doesn't vote in primaries, and I'm certainly going to vote in November of 2020, something I did not do in November of 2016.
And when you told me the reason why you didn't, it made a lot of sense to me. Because of all the research that you're doing, you did not want to be accused of being a Trump partisan.
Yeah, I didn't want to be successfully accused of that. I mean, and I wanted to keep an open mind. And quite frankly, back then, I wasn't sure that Trump would actually work out. Now, he's certainly doing a good job.
He's exceeded my expectations in every way, not the least of which is the entertainment factor of his presidency.
So I ranked these states in the number of electoral college votes that they're supposed to have. You need 270 to win. We're only showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 states. So in these 9 states, 158 votes. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win California. That's going to be very tough to do. But I do believe what he's going to do is he's going to contest California. And the significance of that is that's going to cause Democrats to have to raise a lot more money to defend what he's doing in that expensive media market. And he will get a lot of attention. He'll be able to do rallies in California and compete in a way. Joe Biden has a much chance doing a rally. I mean, how's he going to keep out all the vegans? All the rallies. Vegans of the world unite.
Yeah.
So you look at this and you say, in California, a state that you would never think a Republican like Trump or somebody like Trump might have a shot, he's gonna make it painful for the other side. But then look at Texas. Everyone say, oh, Biden did really well. He got 662,000 votes or whatever it is. Sanders almost gets the same number. Look at the number of votes that Donald Trump got in Texas. That should scare everyone's saying, oh, Texas is turning blue. Texas is not turning blue.
Texas is red as hell.
Texas is going to vote for Trump. That's 38 votes right there. And Texans love Trump.
Yeah.
North Carolina, Biden at 560, Trump at 747. Tennessee, Biden 200, Trump 339. Colorado, big deal for Biden 175, Trump almost 600,000.
Wow.
I mean, these are if you're somebody who's going to get the call because you're the billionaire and you've got to fund this idiot Biden through a media campaign, you're like, what? Why am I doing this?
You'd be better.
You moved to American Samoa.
Well, I was going to say your money would be better used becoming a sponsor on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. This is wasting money to give it to sleepy Joe Biden.
Yeah, and look at another state where you can get 9 electoral votes, Alabama. Biden gets 287,000 votes and Trump gets 700,000.
Wow.
Wow. These numbers, look at Utah. Biden gets 30,000 votes, Trump gets 273,000. Now this is a state where that, turncoat traitor Romney and Ewan McMuffin, his ally, are agitating against Trump. Look at the strength of support in a state where it doesn't matter. Right, 273. Now maybe people don't have a lot to do in Utah, and they say,
why does it not matter? What do you mean?
Because there was the Republican primary was a formality for Trump. You didn't have to, get in your car.
Right.
There are no same problems as in California.
Could be snowing in Utah.
Could have been, yeah. And in Arkansas, I mean, they look at that. I mean, 92,000 for Bite Me and 238,000 for Trump.
I think a lot of people in Arkansas know what the Clintons are all about and really want to see them #lock her up.
Yeah. Now, what I do see in the degree to which we went from having the semblance of a competition last week to now having on lockdown for Biden, I wonder, and I gave an interview before I came over here in print, I wonder whether this has something to do with Barr and Durham, that the folks who know that they're going to potentially be indicted or questioned over corruption and obstruction of justice and Clinton Foundation frauds or whatever, they saw Barr and Durham getting close and they reasoned that the bereavement thing was going to get really big and they had to have a candidate stand up and be counted who could say, look, all that Barr is doing now, all that Durham's doing, this is just political retribution they needed a Biden to have cover. I'm just wondering for Clinton, Obama, and Biden himself.
Can we contemplate for 1 second how insane everyone would go if, like, Eric Trump married Donald Trump Jr.'s ex-wife and then impregnated a hooker and was revealed to be a crackhead?
Didn't he do that?
That was Biden. That was Hunter
that's
Biden.
right. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I mean, that would be nonstop news all day, every day until Trump was out of the White House and you never heard of them again.
Right.
And they're just like, meh.
Yeah. That's
Hunter Biden.
amazing. We Bidens. So with that, on the subject of Ukraine, the accepted wisdom, right, for 2015, 16, with Crossfire Hurricane and everything, is that there's no question that Donald Trump, a person who has done no business in Russia, who went to a military academy as a kid, who is a red, white, and blue American, apple pie and style American, really into the schmaltzy American stuff. There's no question that that guy is a Russian spy. On the other hand, somebody like the Clinton family that's been messing around in with the former Soviet Union with Mark Rich, and doing deals with the oligarchs in Ukraine, it's preposterous to think that the Ukraine government might have wanted Hillary to win in 2016, as this Axios, and I don't understand if you hit that link.
I like Axios.
Well, I don't understand why, where the name kind of, maybe we should call it Ax-Murderios, but here's Senator Richard Burr, a Republican, saying that Ukraine was in for Hillary, and here's this pompous piece in Axios saying that it's all that Burr claimed without evidence.
Right.
They publish. I doubt that a senator of the United States would make a claim without evidence.
Well, certainly we know Adam Schiff would.
Right, but and this appeared in Axios, and the way that this is like they project themselves as this is the instruction manual for people who don't have a lot of time. These are the really well-connected people. They know everything, and if they say Burr said something without evidence, then just take it as gospel. You could trust us.
It's been debunked.
It's been debunked. We're the debunking section of Axios.
Short work of that.
And I don't think this has been debunked in the slightest. I think that
it's fully bunked.
It's a double bunk bed.
Exactly, double bunk.
And here we have in the Hill, and they moved my friend on the Hill at Urena, John Solomon, they moved him out of the Hill into his own deal. And here's a story in the Hill before he left saying, absolutely, the Ukraine government is opening an investigation into whether or not elements in Ukraine were all in for Hillary in 2015 and 16. And I think there's no question they were. I mean, Ukraine, I've been there quite a few times. It's an interesting place. There are many lovely people there. You don't go to Ukraine to go and get an MBA in ethics. I mean, that is, or a graduate degree in ethics. That's not why you go to Ukraine. And there's no question that it's a slippery slope over there. There's no question that there have been a lot of crooked deals, and there's also no question that Democrats and Republicans are involved in that. And it is certainly reasonable to go back into the history and understand what the hell, for example, was the Clinton Foundation doing in Ukraine beginning by 2004. And here we have a press release. I didn't provide the link, but there's a reference to it here. When you hit this link now, of course, the Clinton Foundation has arranged for somebody's arranged for the link to go 404.
Oh.
But I think there's another, we don't have to try to find it now because we're running low on time, but it definitely is a real press release. And if you go back into it for a second, Jason, it says here, it's dated the 27th of November, 2005. And it says here that Bill Clinton and a minister, Bill signs an agreement enabling something called William J. Clinton Foundation to assist the government of Ukraine. And remember, we've talked about this, foundations can't be agents for governments. And if you're going to be an agent for a government, you're supposed to sign under the Foreign Agent Registrations Act. And if you're going to be an officer of an entity or committing an entity to do something, it'd be useful if you had legal authority to do it, and if the entity actually existed, which it didn't. None of these things.
For that.
These are details,
Yeah.
right? But you just see you're in Ukraine.
We got pharmaceuticals to sell, Charles.
I'm happy to be in Kiev. I bet you are. I mean, think of the hot and cold running beautiful women who are chasing you around Kiev. I'm sure there's a lot of fun to be there, Bill. I'm sure you told your family exactly everything you were doing there, including your daughter and your lovely wife. So when you look at this is an example of people like a Bill Clinton being able to bamboozle fellow fraudsters around the world, signing these agreements that sound hopeful and positive for an entity, the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative in Ukraine. There was no such entity lawfully created anywhere in the world as a charity. But this gets signed. And then if you look in here, Jason, this is an interesting timeline that somebody put together of the $31.3 million that was given to the Clinton Foundation by Justra, supposedly. Now, a shout out to Peter Schweitzer and the people at the Government Accountability Institute. Peter was kind enough to put me together with a great person who does a lot of research for them, has been very helpful, and we're combing through some information that they have here. But this definitely suggests, this lengthy timeline, see, it starts in August 2005. Here's Frank in Kazakhstan, Frank Justra, goes on and on and on. But it suggests that $31.3 million went from Justra into this Clinton Foundation for HIV/AIDS work. And this is a very important moment because the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative that was created on paper March 24th, 2004, there's no evidence in the public domain I've been able to find yet, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I haven't found it, that shows the IRS granting authority for this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative to be an actual charity. And yet there's a lot of evidence that Peter Schweitzer's group has put together, and evidence up in Canadian filings, which we now have copies of, that show money being routed towards the Clinton Foundation in New York to fight HIV/AIDS at a time when it wasn't registered in New York to do that. It had no legal authority to do that. All these wire transfers are coming in and out of New York bank accounts that should never have been set up in the first place. What's going on early in 2006, Jason, involving the Clintons?
Sounds like maybe a Senate election?
Re-election campaign getting set up to be the prohibitive front runner in 2007-8.
Charles, John Glasgow, who I think takes that name in tribute, is telling us that Chief Justice Roberts just put out a statement calling out Schumer for threatening the justices.
Good.
And
good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Schumer, and thank you, John. And people should, if they haven't looked up John Glasgow, they should look up John Glasgow.
Or go back and watch our show about the strange death of John Glasgow.
Exactly. So I've been telling people in the past, and just here's the actual language. In New York State, now let's remember I mentioned that, what was Hillary doing in 2006?
Running for Senate, right?
Representing what state?
New York.
A state where, now did she actually?
Where she's not from and didn't live before moving here a month before running for Senate and knows nothing about, and most people here don't like her.
Yeah, she's a globalist carpet-bagging crony.
Right.
Yeah. I said bagging, carpet bagging, not something else. But anyway, so Schedule 4B, you're supposed to, in New York State, you're supposed to list out all your government grants. That's New York law, right? The kind of law that she's
sworn. To run, you mean? To run?
No, for a charity. Charities are supposed to do that. And Hillary's a junior senator from New York State. Her husband is, in theory, living in Chappaqua, and in theory, operating somehow connected to this various Clinton charities. In theory, wasn't he president of the United States? Yeah, he was. Was he impeached? Yeah, I guess he was impeached. Did he have to give up his law license for lying under oath and obstructing justice?
And pay
I think he had to do
$800,000.
Yeah. So he was Attorney General. He went to Yale Law School. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He didn't work at McKinsey. But the point is...
Phi Beta Kappa?
He wasn't Alpha Beta Kappa. No, he wasn't.
Bill Clinton wasn't?
I don't think so.
We're going to check that.
But let's stay on this if we can. So Jason, if we could do this is really fun, actually. If we could go into this link here.
The timeline? No, the thing below the timeline.
Yeah. Now, actually, not that. So, but that gives you the rules and regulations. I'm sorry. If we can go back into the slide. And maybe if we go to the next page, all right, and go up here to the search registry and punch in, let's punch in 311580204 and see what happens.
Charles, did you ever notice that when there's clickety-clacking of a keyboard, people complain, but when you spend thousands of dollars to build a digital noise gate to make that go away, nobody says anything?
Down here. Okay, so if we look, and let's hit 2005 annual report at the bottom. If they still have it, they may not have it. And, not all the way at the bottom, further up. 5, yeah, let's hit that and see what comes up. Is there an annual filing of the Clinton Foundation for 2005? Oh, there is one. Let's see in the next page. Is there a list of, next page, do they list out any government grants in 2005? And you remember, Bill was in Ukraine supposedly getting a government grant.
Nah.
So do we put that stuff down? Nah, we don't believe in doing that. Hillary's a senator. That's why you're a senator. That's why you carpetbag. You come into a place like New York so you don't have to do any of this stuff. So if we go back in here, let's look at that same search function again. And instead of putting in what you've got, let's put in a different name. You can do it right. I guess you have to go back, page back. And yeah, put in International Peace Institute there. And hit search. Now this is an old thing that was set up. It was originally called the International Peace Academy, and it was originally set up in Minnesota as not a plaything, but it was under the, I think, aegis of Norwegian interests. But now if we go down the page here to 2005, let's look at see what a different, this is not a original
Oh,
New
so
York
these guys are going to say they gave money and the Clintons say, no, you didn't?
No, this is an example of how to actually fill out the form properly. So here's the same form for the same period, okay? And now look at this. They list out, stop right there. They list all the governments that have given money to this charity.
Norway, look at that.
Right. And the biggest one's Sweden. Bunch of European governments, basically, give money to this International Peace Institute, which has meetings in New York and talks about peace, love, and cooperation.
Liechtenstein doesn't want peace that much.
But if you look, exactly, if you look down the list, there's no de minimis number here. There's a breakdown of every single government grant. That's New York law. And these are all foreign governments. So it's not like the people running the International Peace Institute say, well, we're in New York. You're only interested in whether New York government entities gave grants to our charity. They read the rules. They decided to play by them. They decide in 2005 to fill out this form properly. Did the Clinton Foundation do that? They're like, F that. We're not going to do that. We disclose all our graft. Nah. We disclose all these people who are sending us money to this fake charity that nobody controls, audited in quotes by an accounting firm that doesn't believe in doing accounting, BKD. So if we go back into the list, not that. If we go back in, let's do the same exercise for the top. No, sorry, further down. The first, yeah, that one right there that doesn't have a year. This one here. Let's see what they do. This is the most recent filing for the same International Peace Institute. If we go to the second page, third page, I guess. Yeah, here's another list. Now, interestingly, this was before it was funded by a bunch of European countries. Now it seems Kuwait, United Arab Emirates,
countries I never heard of. Kingdom of
Bahrain, probably.
Oh, they ran out of space.
Bah humbug. But you go down the list. This is all mostly European, and so and you think, wow, 15 different grants. Let's go to the next page. Does it keep going? Oh my God, feel the love.
These guys are doing all right.
Yeah. Liechtenstein, again, down at the bottom of the class, and stingy government of Japan, 4959.
How'd they arrive at this? The exchange rate?
Probably for
yen. A couple yen. Get out of here.
A lot of yen, probably, yeah. But anyway, so you look at this, and even the permanent mission of the People's Republic of China gives them 30 grand. Wow. Probably for takeout Chinese food.
See, why are all these even numbers? I mean, I guess this is US dollars, and then how does Like, it seems to me to come up with a number like 4,959, you'd need so many Japanese diplomats in a room. Like,
that would be endless discussion.
How did they get to that?
Let's have a meeting to discuss about,
definitely not 5,000.
That's right.
Not 5,000.
They'll be like, I've written a PhD thesis on why it should be
$49.50 is too cheap.
Yeah, 4959 has a ring to it.
Exactly.
But the point being here that this is the law, and the Clinton Foundation has never complied with the law in New York. No part of the Clinton Foundation has ever complied with the law. And the reason New York State wants this is they understand, I believe, the history shows, experts know, that foundations have been used as a way to route money from governments to American politicians in violation of American law. Foreign governments are not allowed to intervene in American political campaigns, but they can disguise it by giving money, as happened with the McCain Institute, as may have happened with the Biden Foundation, as certainly happened with the Clinton entities, by giving money to allied foundations to dynastic political families like the Clintons, like the Bushes, and others. So this isn't, people say to me, wait, Charles, you're being too tough, and no, I'm not. I moved to New York when I was 3. I take this place seriously. It's a nice place, in part. And the laws are very good when it comes to charities. They should be enforced uniformly. That we have this International Peace Institute making the disclosures, which may or may not create news back in Norway and elsewhere, that this entity connected to Norwegian politicians is taking so much money from a whole range of governments, including Middle Eastern governments, might be somewhat controversial in Norway, which is not known to be that close to Kuwait and Bahrain and the United Arab.
With all their oil, maybe they must be talking to them.
I don't know. I mean, I think their foreign policy is pretty much not all that pro those countries. But anyway, if we go back into the slide, that was just up there so you guys could see. Here's a charity complying with the law in 2005, right the way through to 2018. The reason there are no Clinton Foundation numbers up here is because the Clinton Foundation doesn't believe in supplying those numbers in compliance with the law. And Democrats and the mainstream media and MSNBC, they all feel like, our mission in life is to torture the Trump Foundation and not investigate this obvious fraud. So if we go to the final page, there's a new thing I just realized that I wanted to make sure people understood. And I suppose if I'd said this in the first broadcast, people would definitely have not watched any of the other ones. But the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, the original entity, was never organized. Never.
Not even for the...
Not even appropriate. Not even
for the library?
Didn't even pretend to be organized.
For the library?
Yeah. So here it is. It's like, so
why don't we go to Arkansas and seize that library?
That's right. We should go to Arkansas.
In the name of the people of the United States. I wouldn't mind. We could move the studio to that top floor apartment.
You're not allowed there, apparently.
Oh.
Maybe we could find...
Once we seize it, though.
Maybe we could find an Airbnb that would overlook it from the other side of the river. And we could send, like water balloons over the Arkansas River.
We should just show up like with an overnight bag and be like, yeah, we're here from Airbnb. We rented the apartment. What are you talking about? Call Bill. Where's Bubba?
That's right. So the lawyers that drafted the Articles of Incorporation are Williams and Connolly. Two of the 3 lawyers are from Williams and Connolly. And they fill out this, I've lifted, people have seen this, the link, it's on the Clinton Foundation website. It's no secret where you find it. But it says the technical language is really important. We, the undersigned natural persons, i.e. they're not corporations,
right.
They're people who are 21 or up, acting as incorporators, okay? Not as initial trustees, but as incorporators. That's an initial sort of pre-formation step. Acting as incorporators, the lawyers adopted the Articles of Incorporation, okay? The version of the Articles of Incorporation that is date stamped 11:22 in the morning on the 23rd of October 1997 as having been received in the Arkansas Secretary of State is the only version of the Articles of Incorporation I see on file in any state, any foreign jurisdiction that has been proffered by the Clinton Foundation as being proof that they were not incorporated but organized. The difference meaning to be organized, the initial trustees, not the incorporators, not the conflicted lawyers at Williams and Connolly who were desperate to get paid all the legal fees that the Clintons couldn't pay until after they got the book deals and after they got out of the White House. Not that, not those lawyers who had a conflict of interest, in my view, but trustees, independent from the Clintons, independent from the law firm, independent from any other potential conflict of interest. Independent trustees have never formally adopted these articles of incorporation and then amended and restated them as far as the records that are on file in Arkansas would seem to prove. Now, 60 days after the lawyers did this, Skip Rutherford, the president of the William J. Clinton Foundation, certified to the IRS in a document that was then sent across state lines from wherever Skip was to probably Washington, D.C., and then once again to the IRS in Ohio. He certifies this Skip Rutherford as president of the William J. that the document that was sent to the IRS was a conformed copy. Conformed is an important
What does
meaning.
that mean?
I'm going to tell you in a second. That it showed any amendments or restatements since October 23rd, 1997. Now, the problem with this is that there are no bylaws on file by December 23rd, 1997 that indicate they were adopted by initial trustees. So the articles have not been adopted by initial trustees. The bylaws are not signed by initial trustees. Without bylaws, there would have been no way for Rutherford to become president unless the lawyers who had incorporated this thing said, you know what, we're just going to now start running this thing, and we're just going to...
It's an impromptu foundation.
Right. Oh, we've got this gigantic conflict of interest we don't want to get tagged on, but we're now just going to say, all right, Skip, you're the president. You're the man. Now, we're lawyers. We're supposed to give you the advice that that's not a great idea, that we really need independent initial trustees who are truly independent to hold an organizational meeting. We're not going to do that. We just need to be paid.
Right.
Pronto.
There you
right?
go.
So the definition of conformed is drawn, this is drawn from IRS manuals, is a copy that agrees with the original and all amendments to it. Okay? And you have to certify that the document is an accurate copy of the original. But to satisfy the IRS, when you apply for tax exemption, you have to actually have been organized as a not-for-profit corporation in the state, which means the certificate has to be approved by the state authorities. Now, there is a quirk in Arkansas law, which I only recently discovered, and this is from Section 125 of the Arkansas Nonprofit Corporation Act of 1993. People can Google it to see what I'm talking about. It states the Secretary of State's duty to file documents under this section is ministerial. That sounds like, a memorandum of understanding, or ministerial means it doesn't mean anything. They're not approving the document. And the law categorically states that whether the Secretary of State files or refuses to file a document, in either case, it doesn't change whether the document is valid or invalid. The fact that it's filed doesn't mean that it's correct or incorrect. It means absolutely nothing. This is a joke, the way the law is written.
But I think that lawyers like to file things like this because it gives the sense of it being...
You can bill somebody.
You can bill someone, and it gives it some official kind of gravitas now.
But it goes on here to say that filing or refusing to file a document does not create a presumption that the document is valid or invalid, or that the information confirmed in the document is correct or incorrect. So in summary, the Arkansas statute in 1993, now what happened in 1993, Jason?
1993, Bill Clinton became the president.
Right. And so they were thinking ahead of how to deal with this foundation. Was the law changed in Arkansas to give the appearance, to give we rubes who don't live in Arkansas and are willing to believe, that maybe in a state like Arkansas people care about doing things properly? Was this set up as far back as 1993 as a way to lull we rubes who don't understand just how crooked the Clintons and their allies can be? Has this been a fraud from the conception, going all the way back to Bill's initial meetings with Williams and Connolly, which are documented in that book that we've talked about several times, where Bill was thinking about a presidential library actively. He wanted to hire somebody at government expense to be the internal historian of of his administration and keep all these. And he was
Eternal?
internal.
Oh. I like the idea of hiring someone to be the eternal. What's the salary for that? I can only do it for about 40 years.
So with this in mind, Arkansas law is not strong enough to satisfy IRS requirements to prove that this thing, in fact, was organized. And think of the number of times that the Clintons and their lawyers and their supposed lawyers, accountants, and trustees, think of the people involved here. You have Bill Clinton, who's standing behind the scenes as president, and then the early years in 2001 forward, running the thing, though he's not an officer, not a trustee, and he's disqualified, frankly, for having to turn in his law licenses and admit that he obstructed justice and lied under oath. I mean, these are not qualities. These are not strong qualities. Another Larry David. Another problem, of course, is that you got 3 trustees who are named. You got Rutherford, who's obviously prepared to sign and do anything, whether he probably is not smart enough to understand this. You then have David Pryor, who was governor, senator, and his son was the attorney general during all this. He's prepared to get, and then he becomes the first dean of the Clinton School of Public Service, with the second dean being Rutherford, who's too dumb to see what's going on. It's a miracle they didn't make Kessel emperor of the Clinton School of Public Service, chief caterer and bottle washer. But anyway, think of the number of times that this crew has gone around and represented to various states and nations that the thing was validly organized when it never was. And think of the opportunities and the legal fees that have been paid here that are a matter of record.
Yeah.
It's not complicated to amend articles of incorporation. We're not talking about, this is not trying to detect those parallel universes and figure a way to get over there and back with the pizzas they make over in the parallel universe.
I know lawyers that like to write 5-page pleadings about how their clients can't afford a bus ticket to Virginia.
Really?
So it's weird. I wonder how much that costs.
Less than a bus ticket. Probably.
Right.
Anyway, so with that, we had a lot going on, and I need to keep this to 90 minutes. We're a bit over time.
It's okay.
And a lot more coming here. I would just caution, I can actually reveal one thing.
What's that?
And that is that one of the reasons we picked the International Peace Institute to talk about is that in the Norwegian press, the general auditor of Norway has decided to audit the International Peace Institute over contributions to the International Peace Institute over time of approximately 130 million kroner, which is about $13 to $26 million, depending on when the flows would have gone in, because exchange rates have moved a lot, US versus kroner. So if the Norwegian government's going to take a hard look at government money going to a New York-based International Peace Institute that may not have spent it properly, it must look at the Clinton Foundation. It must look at Unitate. It must look at the Clinton Global Initiative. And it's a major league sign of progress. So when you and I first started talking to our mutual friend out there in Minnesota, that person and others told us that, Norway is a great place. You should go there, particularly in the summer. We, of course, went in January. But that they would never change because it was just the mindset to love socialism. Bernie says that, he's trying to create Norway here and Norway on the Hudson. And things are moving, even ever more rapidly day by day to our great friends in Norway. Thank you for really digging in here, rolling up your sleeves. We're seeing things move in New Zealand and in Australia. I think things are set to move in the United States.
I hope so.
Various jurisdictions. But again, you're ripping the scabs and dressings off of festering bandages, festering wounds that have been, living on swamp bilge water for decades. Tumescent
pus
exactly.
infused.
The McElhenney secret sauce, for that she likes in her hot sauce, Hillary Clinton. So it's not something, you can't just go and say, well, I'll fix this over here, and it's not going to affect lots and lots of other things. So I'm hopeful that when the big moves come, and I think they are coming finally, people are going to be very happy. Thank you for your patience, viewers, and thank you, Jason. Thanks to the art department. I hear from my secret spies tell me that the book project might be moving along.
Yes, the book project is, so what I'm planning to do is I'm going to make a very limited number of these books and offer them not for sale, but as gifts to top-level sponsors. So I'm just working out the logistics of getting the first book made and just, see the quality of it and everything, and then I'll be making an announcement about that very soon. But in the interim, people can still become sponsors now, and for as little as $2 a month, Charles. It's almost nothing. It's literally cents per day, probably less money than people spend on toothpaste, although you definitely need your teeth. But the point is, it's a small amount to it's not about putting information behind a paywall. It's about realizing that we've got these services like YouTube and Facebook that have a lot of control over the information that people can see. And they have that control because everybody has given it to them in exchange for what they perceive as free product. So with the sponsorship of Crowdsource the Truth, people are bypassing that whole mechanism, helping us get them information that perhaps YouTube, Facebook, the powers that be, dopes like Adam Schiff and whoever else can influence Amazon and whatnot. Get all those guys out of the way, and you can buy back your ability to see whatever information you want for just as little as $2 a month. So if people go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, they're going to get access to a huge and continually growing library of sponsor-exclusive content that will be growing yet again tonight at 8 p.m. with a new episode of High Dive with Lee Stranahan. I hope to see everybody there. And Charles, I'll see you on Sunday.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for watching, everybody.